everyone on this Saturday morning, and welcome back to another You Lead episode of Konbit Talk. I'm your youth leader's host for today's episode 4. My name is Janael, joined with my fellow youth leaders. Olivia Valencia,
Felipe Canton.
Luis Alfonso,
Isaac Hernandez.
Professor Alfonso, and Catherine Consumers. And our founder and the executive director, Reverend Mila DeRosier. Today, we are proud to announce our guest speaker, Mr. Eduardo Canton, who will discussing effective ways parents, guardians, and caregivers, and can have a discussion about problem gambling and youth leaders. Mr. Eduardo, welcome to our podcast. Please tell us about yourself.
Well, thank you for having me here. It is a great pleasure and honor to have been invited to this podcast today. Um, my name is Eduardo Canton. I'm a father of three boys that I have at home, two of them teenagers, one preteen. I was born and raised in Cuba, and I've been here in the Boston area for 28 long years now. And I'm very happy to be here today with you.
Problem gambling is when one's gambling habits start to negatively affect their life. This can happen when they spend too much time or money on gambling, feel anxious or stressed when they can't gamble, or continue to gamble even though it's causing problems with friends, family, or school. It's not just about losing money, it's about how gambling affects a person's well-being and relationships.
Why it matters for youth, parents, and caregivers to talk about problem gambling. Young people are more vulnerable to developing problem gambling habits because their brain are still developing, making it harder to control impulses. Early exposure to gambling can increase the risk of problem later in life. Young youth must understand this risk and make informed choices about gambling. So now, Mr. Kenton, as a parent, what is your perspective on this topic?
It's a great question. I think I'd like to start by talking about, a little bit of my understanding of adolescence, also known as the teenage years. And this is the time where us human beings are trying to find ourselves. We don't know why, we don't know the purpose, our purpose in life. Sometimes we don't know where to fit in. We're missing something and we know it, and we're looking for that constantly. And during that time, as you mentioned, your brain it's not mature enough, and there's more vulnerability for teenage boys to um, you know fall into gambling. Um, this is actually something that as parents we should be looking for signs and have a lot of conversation, open conversations with our teenage boys, and not so much teen because I think is nowadays this is actually impacting kids before the teenage years, as we have gambling accessible on the cell phones through applications, betting applications. Not only that, not only sports betting, but also through video games such as solitaire. There's a lot of those video games that traditionally have been entertaining to everyone, including adults, but now you can bet on those, and it provides a way for kids to fall into this with the illusion that they're going to make a ton of money. I think the most important thing is communicating, actually looking for signs. Typically, kids that are kind of obsessed with money and always talking about money, um, that may be an indication that there is something going on. And I think as a parent, I want to approach that, in a very subtle way, because this is the typical age where kids get really defensive when you talk to them. So part of that, it's having an approach that not accusing the kid, but having an informal conversation, a casual conversation, and trying to ask key questions to see where my kids are, and to kind of see if I can identify whether they're actually prone or they're already gambling. That could be the case. But it is a very, very risky, dangerous. thing for teenagers, for anyone in general, but especially more for teenagers, as they're more susceptible to have a lot of more problems develop from the gambling addiction.
Thank you. So now we're gonna give place to the questions.
Thank
Uh,
you.
question, yeah. As a parent, do you worry about how this could impact your life?
Oh, absolutely. I think one of the jobs of one of the jobs of being a parent is that as soon as, actually even before our kids are born, we're already worrying about, about them, their future, and especially this, because this has a ripple effect. And in some cases, this actually has led to people to commit suicide. So it's not only the addiction that could arise as a result of a gambling addiction.
She was trying to say, as an adult, have you seen gambling? Have you seen that gambling has increased specifically youth? Like, have you seen it increase throughout the years? Have you seen it become more popular as like technology has gotten higher?
Oh, totally. Technology, it's actually a huge factor in gambling addiction in kids and youth in general. Think about this. Years ago, you had to go to a casino, traditional places to gamble, to play cards or to do the slot machines or whatever the case. There's also the nobody talks about the illegal gambling, all of those games that happen that are illegally, that is actually even more dangerous than going to the casino. But nowadays you have technology at your hands, at the tip of your fingers. It is so easy, and to sign up for these applications, there's actually no filtering, no requirement. Anyone can pretty much sign into those applications that offer the time. People go into a restaurant, the it's just like that. Things don't work like that, and that the increase that we see nowadays, and why this has have become such a big problem, is because we have technology right at our hands. I don't think the cases of gambling in youth were. I had to look at the stats, but I would actually say that the gambling cases in youth 15, 20, 30 years ago was a lot less than it is nowadays. And that is because of technology. That's my feeling about that.
Next question.
The next question is, what do you think are some major sources that make youth begin their path of gambling, and what can parents do to prevent it?
The major sources for youth to become gamblers, that I you were cut off. Is that, I think that's what you ask?
What do you think there are some major sources that make youth begin their path of gambling, and what can parents do to prevent it?
Well, I mean, aside from technology, I think also sometimes I feel, this is my personal feeling about this, sometimes peer pressure. The fact that then other kids may see that, other kids whose parents might not be able to afford that, and then that would actually start something in the kids' minds like, how do I get those? And then one thing leads to the other. I think that it's about making his money. Also, the fact that we as parents need to teach our kids work ethics, teach them that, you go to school, you work, you earn the money the right way. You work hard, you earn money, you can get things in life, you can get ahead, you can build a future for yourself. And that's actually a way to prevent it. But again, more than anything, it's looking for the signs. The kids, when we as humans, not only kids, go through something, we show signs. And it's actually about trying to see those signs early enough to try to get some help. And again, prevention wise, a lot of talking. I talk to my kids all the time about what is actually gambling, what does constitute, and how is it designed for gamblers to lose over time. It may give you the illusion that you win in at first, and that's how they reel you in. That's how you get hooked on that. You may win instantly, but then in the long run, you end up losing. And then you become that you develop that addiction that's going to lead into you living a chaotic life. A lot of problems that comes with addiction, like addiction to drugs or addiction to alcohol or other things. So that as a parent, that's what we can do. A lot of talking, a lot of communication, looking for signs. Again, talk to kids about the importance of work, encourage them, but also more importantly, lead by example. Lead by example. My kids all the time, they joke around and says, "Oh, can we bet? You want to bet on this?" And then, you know, not reprimanding my kids, but talking about that and why that isn't a good thing, right? And that's how I kind of hopefully prevent that from happening.
What are some ways you think could stop youth from gambling?
Well, that is a great question. Um, I it is a tough question, and I think that I think it's $1 million question. How do we stop them? Well, I think doing a a great or having a great prevention mechanism will ultimately lead to stop them from becoming addicted to gambling or going into gambling. The way I look at it is like preventive methods usually work more than reacting to something, right? And part of that prevention is looking out for signs, but trying to be involved with your kid, have conversation, have a good parent to kid to son relationship, a daughter, talking to them, talking about the important, teaching them the values, that kind of thing. Again, I think to stop it is to prevent it. Have a good prevention mechanism, a good way to prevent it. Kind of like a lot of places do with people in general, like medicine. Instead of just waiting for you to get sick, like obesity that could lead to a lot of things, well, let's try to prevent it. Let's try to actually eat better. Let's try to exercise. Let's try to do certain things to prevent something from happening in the future. I think that ultimately will um, teaching your kids good values, and that will hopefully prevent that from happening in the future.
Thank you. Next question.
I have one.
Yeah.
Do you think that what's worse, gambling addiction or drug addiction?
Any addictions in general are bad. It it's funny because I think, it's been cases that gambling addiction has led to loss of life, just as a drug addiction that could kill you. Overdose, not only that, but it destroys your relationship with your family and friends. Gambling could probably do the same as a drug addiction. Maybe not as quick, and maybe the odds of dying or causing yourself harm from that may not as great as having a drug addiction, but ultimately they're all bad. Anything that is addictive, it's actually bad. That's my thought on that. Whether, I mean, we can argue and whether some things are worse or not, depending on how you look at it. Ultimately, they're gonna end up destroying your life, your personal life, your relationship with your family, relationship with your friends, your sentimental relationship in general.
Do we have any questions? Any more questions?
Um, have you ever been in a situation where you had to deal with this? If so, what did you do?
Um, Thank God that I haven't. I have not. Um, but that would be a great question. How would I react if I had a family member, in this case, maybe a kid. Um, I think probably the best approach is with love. Uh, Maybe a little bit of tough love would also be in the mix, but it's hard for me to formulate an opinion, a hypothetical opinion, right? I haven't been in those shoes to be able to talk about it. Um, and again, if anything could happen, I may say that I may have an approach. If that ever happened, I may say that I have an approach now. But if that actually did happen, I may have a different approach at that time because the brain works in such a mysterious way that sometimes it's actually kind of hard to predict the kind of behavior that I would have if I actually ever faced a situation like that.
I have a question. This is more of like a your opinion question, but do you feel like other parents are aware of this issue or have any idea like about this addiction? Because I think most parents, when they think of addiction and issues, they just think about like drugs and alcohol and like all the main things, but they don't really think about how gambling could really like develop over time and affect them as they get older.
Yeah, just as a question.
Mhm.
Th-
So to follow our question, how can you educate parents about it if they don't know about this addiction?
So great question and great follow-up question. So I have to be totally honest. Thank you to Dr. Milan and the great work she does at the center. I became more aware of this. I always knew that to be a problem because in my mind, any addiction, it's bad. But I didn't know how bad it was of it's kind of such of a epidemic in a way, right? I didn't know it was so bad. It was actually at this point until I started interacting more with the center. And in turn, it made me aware of the reality of the situation. Um, you know, and I would say as I was unaware of the danger, or maybe not the danger, but how bad this is in youth, I want to say that parents probably out there, they feel the same way. They may be looking at this as something insignificant because typically we think about addiction side, drug addictions or alcohol or all the things that are actually that can cause excuse me, they can cause death right away, right? Something that would actually impact your physical well-being, your health. Um, Often we don't think about this as a huge issue. We think about it as something innocent. We realize and we understand it's an addiction, but we don't think much of it, especially in the youth, without realizing that they have it accessible. They have it on their hands nowadays. They don't have to walk into a casino to do this. And to the follow-up questions, how can we do? I think it's about educating parents out there, workshops, communication. I always think about cigarettes, right? Doing campaign to let people know about the truth. I don't know if you remember the Dr. Miglan, you probably, if she's in the call, those campaigns about truth, right? The truth about nicotine and what it does to your body. I think doing campaigns like that about youth gambling and the repercussions of this in their lives would actually go a long way, would actually raise that awareness in parents that are kind of dormant, that they don't know the dangers of gambling.
Thank you.
You're
And
welcome.
any more questions?
Question. Why do you think this situation or isn't gambling?
Why do I think the situation is?
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
why do you think this situation is or isn't gambling?
situation, I guess
I think Mr. Kenton, Isaac is asking, when do you know a situation is a game, is gambling or it's not gambling?
Oh,
How does a youth make the difference? Oh, wait a minute, I'm gambling here, or no, this is not gambling. I think that's a wonderful question, Isaac, as well. Thank you.
no, that is definitely that's a great question. I mean, gambling has a couple components, right? Um, I mean, usually there is some sort of there is some sort of thinking or rationale. Like usually to gamble, you put some thought into it, right? Um, you know, it there's usually a price involved and a chance of winning that price. And I think those are kind of like the components to determine whether something is gambling or not. And I think it wouldn't be, in my opinion, if you didn't have any of those three components involved, like consideration, a prize, a chance of winning that prize. I think if you, in my opinion, if you take one of those three components out of the equation, then it wouldn't be considered gambling per se. I'm not an expert. I'm not a psychologist. That's just my personal opinion. But either way, if even if it's not gambling, I would actually keep an eye on that if my kid were constantly talking about those things, right? Maybe that could lead into gambling at some point. I think sometimes we, as parents, not sometimes, we always have to pay attention to what kids say to us. Open our ears, listen to them. It's not all about us telling them or teaching them, but also part of that is listening.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, okay. So I think we're done. Thank you, Mr. Kenton, for joining us today. Thank you to the listeners, and thank you to my fellow youth leaders. And we we learned a lot today. So for youth and parents who are tuning in, please get involved in prevention efforts. Your youth can join EHCC You Lead program. Contact us at the ehcc.org. And for problem gambling hotline, call 1-800-327-5050. And thank you again, Mr. Kenton, for joining us.
It has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Can we say bye? A goodbye?
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Have a good day.
You too.
Bye bye.